Welcome to our final virtual edition of our Lunch and Learn for 2017. And the topic for today is Take a Stand for Your Health.
You know, I'm still standing better than I ever been. Looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid.
Hey, welcome guys. Hope you enjoyed that little sound clip. Today you have myself, Bryce Connor, who is Creation Health Consultant at Winter Park.
And Stephanie Arguello, Creation Health Consultant for Orlando. Welcome back, guys. So today, like we mentioned, we are talking all about standing for your health. So this is a topic that has become very popular recently as studies have come out to really talk about how we've become more sedentary in our lives. So today our objectives are to talk about the effects of long-term sitting. We're going to discuss the differences between exercise and movement and why both are important, and share some practical tips to increase the amount of movement that you're getting in your daily routine.
So first off, we were born to move. Our bodies are formed and our muscles are developed in order to let us move, whether it be walking, dancing, playing, just interacting with everything that goes on around us is movement. So just think about it. How much time do you actually spend moving in a day? Just think about that. So we are created to move, but our environment has kind of conditioned us to sit. We do a lot of sitting. So let's think about that on our next point.
So before we move further into our discussion on sitting, we wanted to take a second to acknowledge the large population that we have. That's our clinical staff, or staff that spends a lot of their day on their feet. We don't want to ignore you. We know that there are just as many risks when it comes to having a job where you stand on your feet. It's important to have proper support, and that goes even down to the type of shoe that you wear, making sure that you have a good sturdy shoe to provide support. And even have balance between that sitting and standing, because it's putting a lot of pressure on our joints and our muscles when we are standing for long periods of time. And then the other thing to consider is think about what you're doing on your days off and weekends, because even if you are in a job where you spend a lot of your day on your feet, are you spending a lot of time possibly sitting when you're not working? And if that is the case, then there's still a lot of great information. So for the rest of this presentation, we're going to focus on sitting and the effects of that, but we want to make sure we're not leaving anybody out. So Bryce did a good job of already mentioning, as a society, we went from, back in the hunter-gatherer time where we were, as a society, on our feet, and we had to actually go hunt for food and, travel by foot. So now in the 21st century, we are a lot more sedentary, and it's, because of technology, and from the moment we get in our car to start our commute to being at work, and then even when we go home, a lot of what we do is sitting. So this is pretty interesting to see. On average, if you are someone who has a job where you're sitting for, during the day, we're spending about 13 hours of our awake time in a chair. And that's not counting the time that we spend sleeping, which of course rest is important, so we don't want to sacrifice that. But even including exercise and time on our feet, on average, it's only about 3 hours a day that we're up and moving. So it's definitely decreased over the years, and we've seen with this decrease an increase in how that affects our health in a negative way.
I think that's actually kind of interesting, because I feel like a lot of people associate sitting with convenience, and we are very tied to our convenience these days, and so it makes us want to sit if it seems like it's more convenient for us.
Definitely. So we're definitely going to talk about, one, what's happening when we are sitting for this long, and then I'm excited to share with you, and we're excited to share some tips for what we can do to break up some of that time that we're sitting.
All right, so in true creation health fashion, we are tying this into our mind, body, and spirit. So sitting does affect you both physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. So for your mind, it slows your brain function. It reduces the amount of blood flow that gets to your brain and may make you groggy or foggy throughout the day, depending on how long you're sitting. Your body, it affects your hip flexors and can tighten your back muscles. You can have strain in your neck, especially depending on the angle of your computer screens or maybe your cell phones if you're staring at your lap, it can strain your neck. You can have swelling in your joints that aren't being used and stretched out, or also in your feet where you are having blood pooling and not being able to blood flow everywhere where it needs to go. And it can obviously increase your chances of gaining weight because you aren't being as active and having the calories, the calorie burning capacity that you may be able to have if you are active. And it can also affect your spirit. It can lead to anxiety and depression. It can, just due to all the other factors in your mind and body, it can bring down your spirit too when you're sitting for long periods of time.
So a lot of what Bryce just mentioned really focuses on those short term, what's happening day to day when we're sitting. But this also can lead to, over time, some definite things that we want to be aware of for that long term effect. So when we look at studies that have been done, there are some really interesting facts to share with you. So like Bryce mentioned, when we are sitting, and the magic number that they found, it seems like is about 6 hours a day. So if you're sitting for over 6 hours in a day, they have found an increase in those depression and anxiety symptoms. So whether it's something that you already experience, it definitely can make those symptoms worse, but it also just leads to more of that likelihood when we have that sedentary lifestyle. In addition to that, if you think about that spiritual and that outlook piece, sitting jobs actually have shown twice the amount of risk of heart disease than jobs when we're standing. So it can, again, over time lead to a decrease in our quality of life. And not only that, but they've, again, found that over 6 hours of sitting leads to a 40% increase in a risk of early death. And that can be from any, number of health complications. But overall, we're looking at a reduction in quality and quantity of life based on the long periods of time that we're sitting.
Scary stuff.
Definitely.
So you may be saying right now, but wait, I exercise every single day. It doesn't matter how long I sit, I exercise. And so that's actually a little bit of a myth. So even no matter if you are jogging or working out, getting your daily exercise, if you spend that 6 hours or more, about 6 to 8 hours a day, if you are sitting, you're still elevating your risk of health problems and complications. So it is still important to break up those sitting periods and get a little movement in your day, even if you've gotten your hour or 2 hours of exercise in the morning or in the evening as well.
And then kind of to change gears a little bit, we've kind of talked about some of the negative effects, and I know some of these can even sound a little bit daunting, but the good news is that when we do become intentional about increasing our movement and, taking time to stand throughout the day, there are so many great health benefits that we can see in our lives short term right away when we make these changes, and also over time they can help to improve our overall health. So, again, going with that mind, body, spirit approach, thinking about just being in a better mood. I know for me, after I've been sitting at my desk working for a while, I might start to get a little frustrated or even distracted, or even more tired. So we can help to boost our mood simply by getting up and going for a walk or standing. Helps to burn calories, something that we always are, looking for. So that's definitely a huge benefit. Also, it helps to tone our muscles, so we can, strengthen our bodies by getting up and standing or moving around. This is also going to help to improve our sleep. So if you're looking at that whole person health approach, we're not just affecting our day, but also improving our sleep at night. And then this is going to also lead to feeling more energized and alert. I know for our team, a lot of times we'll take walks in the afternoon, right around that 2 to 4 p.m. time when we start to get sleepy after lunch. And it's very helpful to kind of go for that walk, come back, and feel more energized.
Yeah, re-energizes me in the afternoon. I need it.
Absolutely. And then overall, it's going to increase your productivity. So you're going to be more efficient at work. And it's just a great way to, again, boost your mood, boost your energy.
All right, so let's talk about, before we talk about the ways that you can get moving and our suggestions, let's think about our barriers to movement. I know a lot of you are probably thinking of them, so let's think about those. A lot of people will say that time is a problem, but some will tell you how simple it is and how time cannot be an excuse for you anymore. Your energy, Stephanie just said, moving actually is going to increase your levels of energy. So maybe it would be a good thing to start moving. So that may not be a barrier anymore. If you're too busy, That is another barrier. We are very busy, especially in our field, but we're going to give you some tips on that. And you may lack motivation. You may feel like it's not important to you. So we're hoping that we can make it a priority for you and your health. And so if you have all these excuses, you're going to, if nothing changes, if nothing changes. So that is our secret phrase for this Lunch and Learn. Make sure you write it down. You're going to need to remember it. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you keep those excuses, nothing's going to change.
And really feeds right into our next part, which is sharing tips. So, we want to start seeing how can we make those small changes to improve our overall health. So get ready, because we are about to share 5 insanely simple tips for how to sit less and move more. So tip number 1, if you have to sit well. So we know that there are jobs and there are certain tasks that would probably be dangerous if you try to do them standing. So there are going to be times where we do have to sit and concentrate and focus on what we're doing. And that's fine, but there is a way to ensure that even with that, we're doing it the right way to be healthy. So some tips to help you is just taking a look at how your desk is set up and how your chair is even set up. So for example, ensuring that your top of your monitor or your screen is at eye level. That way you're not hunched over looking at your screen. Your forearm should be parallel to the floor. So take a look. If you're sitting at your desk now, just be aware of how your arms are held. Feet should be flat on the floor. Your legs should be at a 90 to 110 degree angle. So if you need to pull out those protractors, you can to measure. Our chairs should completely support our thighs. So we don't want to be so high off the ground that we're cutting off circulation if our feet are dangling. The backrest should also support our lower back. So this is, again, just some small tips of how we can set up our desk, our environment, to set ourselves up for success.
All right, tip number 2, take breaks from sitting at work. So some of those excuses that we had talked about was time, lack of energy, and motivation, and all of that, and that you're too busy. So these are some really easy ways that you can get in your sitting breaks at work. So you can stand or stretch hourly. You can set a timer for every hour, or just be conscious of every time the clock hits the hour on the dot, you stand up, maybe just walk around your little area. You can even go out and take a walk, which we'll talk about, or just stretch your legs, grab your foot, do a little quad stretch. It'll help. It'll get your blood flowing and get you feeling better. You can take the stairs when you are going places. It helps that you're not going to be sitting in an elevator or standing in an elevator. If you can take the stairs, get yourself moving. Go for a walk. It doesn't have to be a long walk, but it can be a walk down the hallway. It can be a walk around the building, maybe around your unit, and that will help get yourself moving, break up your sitting. And then you can stand for phone calls. I know I personally do this if I talk on my cell phone for work, and so if I'm on my cell phone, if I'm in a conference room, I'll probably just be walking around the room while I am on that call. It just keeps me busy and keeps me focused on my call, so I'm not daydreaming about other things.
So that definitely helps with me, especially if you have like a recurring, for example, we have a weekly call with our team. So during those calls, it's a great time to sneak in some squats or sneak in a walk while you're, being efficient and having that conversation. So tip number 3 is to get a standing desk. And we recognize that not everyone can just magically, find that, the funds to do that, but there are also ways to be creative and do it yourself. But again, we're finding that it's really helpful to look at how your desk is set up and making sure that that monitor is at a level that whether you're sitting or standing is going to be comfortable and best for your posture. So of course, here we have an example of an adjustable standing desk, but there are so many different options. People get really creative, and I love Pinterest. So you can find so many different ways to set up a standing desk. Of course, we want it to be safe. That's most important. But whether it's, lifting up your laptop on a box, or finding, a different type of shelf that can help to give you that option to stand if you would like. And I even found this on Amazon for, I believe it was under $30. It was a cardboard foldable desk that you could use for standing. So there are different options at different price points. I encourage you to do research to find, different options that work for you. But again, it's just changing up how we're working and being intentional about setting ourselves up in a way that allows us to stand more.
Very cool. Tip number 4, set a timer. I did touch on this a little bit, but setting a timer and reminders to move. So fitness watches, if you have, I know I personally have a Fitbit. If you have a Fitbit or any of the other fitness watches, a lot of them will realize when you haven't been moving for a while, and they'll either vibrate at you or maybe ding at you telling you, hey, let's get up for a little bit, let's move. Your smartphone, you can have awesome different options on your phone. We'll be talking about apps. You can get an app on your phone that will remind you to move and give you maybe ideas on what you can be doing to move. Or even if you don't have any of those fancy things, you can just have a digital timer and just set that for an hour or so and get up and move when that timer goes off.
And Bryce mentioned apps. There are a lot of great apps out there, and this is just an example of one where not only does it remind you to stand every hour, but it gives you an exercise to do. But I've even heard some of our wonderful health champions came up with an idea to make 10 and 2 the times where they would get up and do some type of activity. So the whole office knew that every day at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., they were going to get up and be active. So again, even if it just starts small and start with setting a couple times throughout the day, it can be really helpful to make sure that you're being intentional about it.
Great.
And tip number 5 is to move outside of work, because yes, it's important during the day, but we all know that once we get home after a long day of work, the first thing we tend to want to do is go home and sit down. So it's important to try to continue to incorporate those healthy habits outside of work. And whether that's, on a weekday or especially on the weekends where sometimes we have opportunities to kind of lay around a little bit more. So ways that we can move outside of work, simple choices that you can make are things like, again, parking far away. It sounds very simple, and it is simple, but it just encourages a little more movement. You can set a step goal, and that could be done with your coworkers or your family. If you're competitive like me, it's helpful sometimes to have that healthy competition. And also find ways to incorporate extra movement into things that you're already doing every day. We don't want to add to what's on your plate already. We know that people do have a lot that they're tasked to do and a lot of responsibilities. So I like to find ways to incorporate movement into things I already have to do. So for example, if you're cooking or you're waiting on something to heat up in the oven, you could be maybe doing jumping jacks or doing some type of stretches. I've seen a lot of really fun ways to incorporate exercise into commercial breaks, because I love to be caught up on my shows, but I can also, be doing maybe sit-ups or crunches for every commercial break. So you can make it fun, again, and still enjoy the things that you enjoy. And even with chores that you have to do, I always give the example of when I'm putting away folded laundry, I'll put away just the washcloths and then the towels, just to add in a few extra steps as I'm still, again, getting things done.
And you don't even have to incorporate extra things like doing jumping jacks in the kitchen or something. Sometimes if you play fun music, you'll just find yourself dancing and you'll be moving anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that really feeds into finding hobbies that are active. So, for me, I love shopping. So when I'm walking around the mall, just being intentional about brisk walking from store to store to get those sales, it can be very helpful. So, and if it's dancing or going for a hike, so, finding things that are going to be healthy hobbies for us are going to just encourage more movement. And then, of course, a bonus tip for moving outside of work is to consider adopting a dog or a cat, although I have not yet been successful at walking my cat on a leash. But it can be helpful, and studies have shown that when you do walk a dog, or they walk you, we tend to walk faster and further. So that's just another fun way to incorporate more movement.
Yeah, and if you don't want to adopt a dog or you can't, you can also volunteer at your shelter.
That is true.
Walk some dogs there.
We love animals.
We're advocates.
So we are wrapping up our final Lunch and Learn for this year, and I know the question that we get a lot is, where are my points? We know you're not here just for points, hopefully, but don't worry. And sometimes, especially getting close to that October 30th deadline, people start to worry and they search, just like searching for Waldo over here. And I just want to reassure you, don't worry. He is there. We are going to help you find your points. They are there. See them? They're right there. So your points will be loaded before the October 30th deadline. So don't worry. You will get your points for this. So thank you, for taking part.
All right, and so with those points, we do want you to log into WebMD and just double check and make sure that you have all of your points in there. You're going to want to see this white screen that's down in the right-hand corner that's going to say, hooray, you have earned all of your rewards. So make sure you see that when you log into WebMD. If you're having any trouble, please contact one of your Creation Health consultants or call that number that's right there on your screen. That's the WebMD helpline, and they can help you reset your password so you can get in there. Make sure your biometric results are loaded, your health assessment is complete, and you've got your points. It should have 50 out of 50 in 2 sections and say hooray, and you should be getting $250 in December.
Which is very exciting, and that money will be direct deposited with your final check before Christmas, so that's definitely something to celebrate. So thank you guys for tuning in for another Lunch and Learn. We hope that these simple tips help to motivate you to incorporate more movement. You know, of course, exercise is great, but we want to make sure we're building in that movement throughout the day. So thank you guys for coming again, and don't forget, hopefully you'll be earning that $250 at the end of the year.